After my son called and invited me to dinner, I was already imagining a warm family evening, but suddenly my 12-year-old granddaughter sent me a message. Please don't come. I was confused. Why? Because my parents want to do something very bad. I decided to listen, and I was right. It turns out that my son wanted... Just listen. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. My coffee mug was halfway to my lips when Lucas burst through the front door. No knock, no greeting, just the sharp click of his expensive shoes against my hardwood floors, and that look, the one I'd been seeing more often lately, like he was calculating something. Dad, we need to talk seriously. His voice cut through the morning quiet. This house is dead capital. I set down my mug carefully, my arthritic fingers suddenly uncertain. Lucas paced from the doorway to my kitchen island, his business shirt wrinkled, tie loosened. He'd come straight from work, apparently, at 10:30 in the morning. Son, would you like some coffee? You seem... No. He waved off my offer, never breaking stride. I don't want coffee, I want you to face reality. The sunlight streaming through my kitchen windows felt too bright now, highlighting the tension lines around his eyes. When had those appeared? When had my boy, the one who used to build model airplanes at this very table, become this stranger in a suit? Son, this house is my life. I'm not ready to give it up. Lucas stopped pacing, turned to face me directly. Ready? Dad, you're 72. How much time do you have left? 5 years? 10? Each word hit like a physical blow. I gripped the granite counter I'd installed myself 30 years ago, needing something solid beneath my hands. That's not... You can't just... I can. His tone was matter-of-fact, businesslike. The market's hot right now. This place could sell for $800,000, maybe more. You're sitting on a fortune while living like... He gestured around my kitchen, taking in the modest appliances, the family photos on the refrigerator. Like this? This is my home, Lucas. It's an asset being wasted. He resumed pacing, his movements sharp and agitated. Look, I've done the research. Property values in this neighborhood have increased 40% in 2 years. We're talking about your future care, Dad. Assisted living, medical expenses. The we stung most of all. Since when had my independence become our problem? I don't need assisted living. I'm managing fine. Are you? Lucas stepped closer, invading the space between us. When's the last time you had a real medical checkup? When did you last update your will? Face it, Dad. You're not thinking clearly about any of this. My hands began to shake, not from age, but from something else entirely. Something I'd never felt directed at my own son. I'll go to a lawyer. His voice dropped, became almost conversational. There are ways to declare you incompetent. The kitchen fell silent except for the steady tick of Gwendolyn's grandmother clock from the living room. Lucas stared at me, waiting for my response, his jaw set in a line I recognized from his teenage years. But this wasn't adolescent rebellion. This was something colder. Get out! Dad, get out of my house! Lucas's expression shifted, surprise replacing calculation for just a moment. Then the mask slipped back into place. Think about what I said. Really think about it. Because this conversation isn't over. He turned and walked toward the door, his footsteps echoing through rooms that had once rung with his laughter. The front door slammed with a finality that seemed to shake the entire house. I stood frozen in my kitchen, one hand still gripping the counter, the other trembling against my side. The coffee had gone cold. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked once, then fell silent, as if even the suburban morning knew something had shifted irrevocably. My eyes drifted to the family photos scattered across the refrigerator door. Graduations, holidays, birthday parties. 47 years of memories held up by cheerful magnets, now seeming fragile as tissue paper. The house felt different after Lucas left, larger somehow, as if his anger had expanded the spaces between rooms. I wandered from the kitchen through the living room, my fingers trailing along surfaces I'd touched thousands of times before. But now I really felt them, the smooth banister I'd hand-sanded, the door frame I'd measured twice and cut once, following my father's old carpentry wisdom. 11 o'clock sunlight slanted through windows I'd installed myself, creating rectangles of warmth on the oak floors. Everything here carried weight beyond its physical presence. This wasn't just a house. It was proof of something I'd accomplished with my own hands. I stopped at the mantelpiece, studying the photographs arranged there like a timeline of love. Gwendolyn on our wedding day, her smile bright enough to power the city. Lucas as a baby, then a toddler, then a gap-toothed kid holding up a drawing he'd made of our family. All stick figures and crooked smiles. "This house is our love in stone and wood," Gwendolyn had said that first spring when we'd planted the garden together. I could still see her kneeling in the dirt, her hands gentle with the rose bushes, planning where each variety would catch the morning sun. The memory pulled me toward the back door. I stepped outside into air that smelled of lavender and possibility. Gwendolyn's garden had outlived her by 10 years, thriving despite my careless maintenance. The roses climbed the trellis exactly as she'd envisioned, creating a living wall of pink and white blooms. I'd built this place over 18 months of weekends and stolen evenings. Bleeding knuckles and aching shoulders, reading construction manuals by lamplight after 12-hour days at the engineering firm. But every board I'd nailed, every tile I'd placed with determination that left my hands raw, all of it was an act of love for a woman who saw potential where others saw wilderness. We'd drawn the blueprints together at the kitchen table in our tiny apartment. Gwendolyn sketching windows while I calculated load-bearing requirements. She'd insisted on quality over speed, on rooms that would welcome grandchildren who might someday visit. "We're not just building a house," she'd told me, watching me frame the doorways with extra care. "We're building dreams." Lucas had been conceived in this house. His first steps happened in the living room, from the coffee table to the couch, with both of us cheering like he'd won an Olympic medal. Christmas mornings, birthday parties, homework sessions at the kitchen island, every significant moment of his childhood had these walls as witnesses. Where had that boy gone? The one who'd helped me plant marigolds, who'd asked endless questions about how houses stayed standing, who'd announced at age 8 that he wanted to be an engineer just like his dad. I touched the bark of the maple tree we'd planted to commemorate his birth. Now it towered above me, its branches wide enough to shade half the backyard. Like Lucas himself, it had grown beyond what I'd imagined possible, but trees grew toward light. People, apparently, could grow toward darkness. The bench where Gwendolyn and I used to sit in the evenings still held the morning sun. I settled onto its familiar surface, feeling the slight sag where decades of conversations had worn the wood smooth. She'd loved this spot, claimed it gave her the perfect view of everything we'd built together. "Every anniversary should be celebrated here," she'd said on our 20th, when the garden was finally mature enough to match her original vision. "This is where we belong." 10 years had passed since cancer took her, but I still felt her presence strongest here among the flowers she'd chosen. The herbs released their fragrance as the day warmed, rosemary for remembrance, sage for wisdom, thyme for courage. She'd planned even that, selecting plants that would fill the air with meaning. Lucas had cried at her funeral, real tears, not the performative grief I sometimes saw at corporate events. He'd held my hand during the service, promising to visit more often, to help me maintain what she'd loved most. That promise had lasted 6 months. Now he wanted to eliminate it entirely, turn 47 years of love into a profit margin. The thought sent something cold through my chest, a recognition that perhaps I'd been naive about more than just property values. I stood slowly, my knees protesting the garden's unforgiving bench. The roses nodded in the slight breeze, their faces turned toward the house as if they too were considering its worth. But they measured value differently than Lucas did. They understood that some things couldn't be reduced to market analysis. Inside, the grandfather clock chimed noon, its voice carrying through windows I'd left open to catch the summer air. Time for lunch, for the mundane routines that had structured my days since Gwendolyn's passing. But routine felt inadequate now, insufficient for the weight of what I'd learned about my son. I needed to understand when everything had changed, and more importantly, what I was going to do about it. By 2 o'clock, the photo albums were spread across my dining room table like evidence in a case I was building against my own memories. Each picture told part of a story I'd apparently been too trusting to read clearly. Here was Lucas at 25, arm around a proud Gwendolyn at his college graduation. The thank you card he'd sent afterwards still tucked between the album pages. "Thanks for everything, Dad. Love you more than you know." His handwriting then was careful, grateful, each letter formed with attention to how it would make us feel. I turned pages slowly, watching my son age in 2-dimensional increments. Wedding photos from 15 years ago, Mindy radiant in white, Lucas beaming beside her, all of us clustered around the happy couple. I remembered that day clearly. Lucas had pulled me aside during the reception, voice thick with emotion. "This house you built," he'd said, gesturing with his champagne glass. "It's perfect for raising kids, Dad. When the time comes, I want them to have what I had growing up." The irony tasted bitter now. More pages revealed Ashley's birth, her first Christmas. Family gatherings that grew increasingly sparse as Lucas's career demanded more of his attention. But the photos from recent years told a different story entirely. Group shots where Lucas checked his phone rather than engaging with conversation. Holiday dinners where he arrived late and left early, claiming urgent work calls. I pulled out my laptop, scrolling through years of emails. The digital trail was even more damning than the photographs. Lucas's messages had evolved from lengthy updates about Ashley's school activities and work achievements to brief business-like communications focused on practical matters. 2019. "Hope you're doing well, Dad. Ashley's soccer season starts next week. Maybe you could come watch a game." 2021. "Dad, have you thought about updating your insurance policies? Property values are really climbing." 2023. "We should discuss your situation. Living alone isn't sustainable long term." This year, "The market's hot. Perfect time to liquidate assets." Liquidate assets. That's what I'd become to him. Not a father to cherish, but an aging inconvenience standing between him and financial opportunity. I found the box of letters from his college years, handwritten notes on university letterhead when email was still novel. His gratitude then was genuine, specific. Thanks for care packages, for tuition payments, for believing in his dreams when he doubted himself. "I know how hard you and Mom work for everything," he'd written during his junior year. "Someday, I'll take care of you both the way you've taken care of me." Another promise broken, apparently. The afternoon light shifted as I worked, creating shadows that moved across the evidence of my son's transformation. When had taking care become synonymous with getting rid of? When had my independence become his burden? I pulled out the current will documents, papers I'd signed years ago, in the confident belief that Lucas would honor everything Gwendolyn and I had built. Standard language about assets transferring to surviving spouse, then to child, upon death of both parents. Clean, simple, generous. Too generous, perhaps. The house assessment Lucas had apparently commissioned lay folded in his last email attachment. $800,000, possibly more in the current market. Enough to transform his life, clear whatever debts his lifestyle had accumulated, fund Ashley's college education with plenty left over, but only if I died or surrendered. I closed the laptop, pushing back from the table. The photos stared up at me like ghosts of better times, when family meant protection rather than predation. Gwendolyn's face smiled from a dozen different years, trusting in futures that would never arrive. What would she think of Lucas now? Would she defend him, insist I was misunderstanding his motives? Or would she see what I was finally seeing, that love had been replaced by calculation, that sentiment was now a liability in his cost-benefit analysis? "He'll get this house over my dead body." The words surprised me, spoken aloud to my empty dining room. Not a threat, but a decision. A recognition that waiting for natural death wasn't enough anymore. Lucas had made clear his intentions. Now I needed to make clear mine. I gathered the photographs carefully, returning them to albums that suddenly felt like historical documents. Evidence of what family used to mean before it became a real estate transaction. Outside, the garden continued its patient growth, following patterns Gwendolyn had established decades ago. Roots deepening, branches strengthening, seasons cycling through their ancient rhythms. Nature understood legacy differently than my son did. It measured value in generations, not quarterly earnings. Tomorrow, I would need to make phone calls, research options Lucas hadn't considered in his rush to liquidate my life, find ways to ensure that 47 years of love wouldn't be reduced to numbers on a closing statement. But tonight, I would sit in Gwendolyn's garden and remember what we'd built together. Not just walls and rooms, but something more enduring than profit margins, something worth fighting for. The grandfather clock chimed 3 times, marking another hour in what I now understood would be a very different kind of summer than I'd planned. The next evening brought an unexpected call. I was finishing a quiet dinner when the phone rang, Lucas's name appearing on the caller ID. 24 hours had passed since our confrontation, and the sting of his words still lingered in my chest like a bruise. "Dad?" His voice was softer now, almost hesitant. "I'm sorry about yesterday. I was way too harsh." I gripped the receiver, moving toward the living room window. Outside, my neighbor was watering his roses in the fading light. Normal life continuing while mine shifted beneath my feet. "I appreciate that, Lucas." "No, really. I've been thinking all day." His tone carried the warmth I remembered from years past. "I let work stress get to me, and I took it out on you. That's not who I want to be." Part of me desperately wanted to believe that my son, the boy who once built model airplanes with me in the garage, had somehow found his way back to the man I'd raised him to be. "What happened yesterday can't happen again," I said carefully. "It won't, I promise." He paused, and I could hear voices in the background. "Listen, Dad, let's meet at the family table, like the old days. How about this Saturday? Mindy's making your favorite walnut pie." The mention of Gwendolyn's recipe caught me off guard. Mindy had asked for it years ago, claiming she wanted to keep family traditions alive. I'd written it out carefully, explaining the secret of adding a touch of maple syrup to the filling. "Saturday? July 20th, just the four of us. You, me, Mindy, and Ashley. We'll use Mom's good china, make it special." His voice grew warm, persuasive. "Ashley's been asking about you constantly. She misses her grandpa." I touched the family photo on the side table. Last Christmas, all of us gathered around the tree Ashley had insisted on decorating with homemade ornaments. "I know you and I have had our differences," Lucas continued, "but life's too short. You always taught me that family comes first." The words sounded right. They echoed conversations we'd had when he was younger, when he'd come to me for advice about relationships, career decisions, life's complications. When I was still his father instead of his obstacle. "Mindy's already planning the menu," he added. "She wants to make all your favorites. You know how she gets when she's excited about family gatherings." Something felt off, though I couldn't place what. Maybe it was the timing, this sudden warmth after yesterday's coldness. Or perhaps the slight urgency beneath his casual tone. "I don't know, Lucas. Yesterday was me being an idiot." He cut me off gently. "Dad, you're 72. I'm 45. How many more chances do we get to fix things between us?" The question hit deeper than I expected. How many family dinners did we have left? How many opportunities to bridge whatever gap had opened between us? "Let me think about it." "Of course, but don't think too long, okay? Mindy's already started preparing." His laugh sounded almost natural. "You know how she is about planning. Everything has to be perfect." After he hung up, I sat in my living room as evening shadows lengthened across the floor. The grandfather clock ticked steadily, marking time that suddenly felt precious and uncertain. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe Lucas really did want to repair our relationship. Maybe yesterday had been an aberration, stress, poor judgment, words spoken in frustration that he genuinely regretted. I wanted to believe that, needed to believe it. But something nagged at me, a small voice whispering that people don't change overnight. That the son who'd spoken so coldly about declaring me incompetent couldn't transform into a loving family man in 24 hours. Still, what if I was wrong? What if my suspicion was just an old man's paranoia, and I was about to destroy the last chance at reconciliation with my only child? The phone buzzed with a text message, pulling me from my thoughts. The text was from Ashley. "Grandpa, please don't come." I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. "Why, sweetheart?" The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times before her response came through. "I heard them talking last night about inviting lawyers so you'd sign papers." My hands began to shake. I read the message 3 times, each word hitting like a physical blow. "What papers?" I typed back. "I don't know, but they were whispering after they thought I was asleep. Something about getting the house now instead of waiting." I sank into my armchair, the phone feeling heavy in my grip. My 12-year-old granddaughter was texting me from her bedroom, risking her parents' anger to warn me about their deception. "Are you sure about this? Mom said she already called someone and they're coming during dessert. Dad said it would be easier if you were relaxed and happy." The manipulation was breathtaking in its calculation. Use family sentiment to lower my guard, then ambush me with legal pressure while I was surrounded by the very people I trusted most. "Grandpa, are you mad at me?" "No, sweetheart. You did the right thing telling me." I'm scared they'll find out I told you. My chest ached thinking of Ashley caught between loyalty to her parents and protection of her grandfather. A child shouldn't have to navigate such adult deceptions. They won't find out from me, I promise. What are you going to do? Good question. What was I going to do? Lucas expected me to walk into his trap willingly, charmed by false apologies and walnut pie. He'd planned this carefully. The emotional manipulation, the family setting, the element of surprise. But now I knew what he didn't, that his 12-year-old daughter had overheard enough to expose his scheme. I'm going to think very carefully about Saturday, I texted back. I love you, Grandpa. I love you too, sweetheart, more than you know. I set the phone down and walked to the kitchen, my mind racing. Lucas had shown his hand without realizing it. He thought he was playing chess against an old man too sentimental to see the board clearly. But Ashley had just given me the most valuable piece of information possible: knowledge of my opponent's strategy. In the engineering world, we called it stress testing, applying pressure to find the breaking point. Lucas thought he'd found mine: family loyalty and the fear of dying alone. What he didn't understand was that knowing your enemy's plan meant you could design a better one. I pulled out a legal pad and began writing down everything Ashley had told me. Times, details, direct quotes where I could remember them. If Lucas wanted to play legal games, I'd make sure I had documentation. The phone rang again, Lucas's name on the caller ID. Perfect timing. Dad, how are you feeling tonight? I moved to the kitchen for privacy, leaning against the counter I'd installed decades ago. Actually, Lucas, I'm feeling sick. I think I ate something bad. Oh no, what's wrong? My stomach's been churning for the last hour. I made my voice slightly weak, convincingly ill. I'm worried it might be food poisoning. That's terrible. Do you need me to come over? Take you to urgent care? The concern in his voice sounded genuine. He was a good actor when he needed to be. No, I just need to rest. But Lucas... I paused, as if the thought was just occurring to me. Maybe we should postpone Saturday. I'd hate to get everyone sick. Postpone? His voice sharpened slightly before smoothing back to concern. Dad, you might feel better by then. It's still 4 days away. I don't know. These things can linger at my age. But Mindy's already prepared everything. She's been shopping, planning the menu. His words came faster now, revealing the urgency beneath his casual facade. She'll be so disappointed. I almost smiled. The pressure was showing, just barely, but enough to confirm what Ashley had told me. I'm really sorry. I know how much work she's put into it. What if you're feeling better by Friday? We could make a game time decision then. Maybe. I injected reluctance into my voice. Though with my stomach issues lately. Stomach issues? Have you seen a doctor? It's probably nothing serious, just age catching up with me. I let that hang in the air, watching him process the implications. All the more reason to have family close by. Dad, we really should stick to Saturday. Ashley's been so excited about seeing you. The mention of Ashley stung, using her genuine affection as a weapon. But it also reminded me why I was doing this, to protect her from watching her family tear itself apart over money. Let me sleep on it, I said finally. If I'm still feeling rough tomorrow, maybe we could push it to next week. A pause. When Lucas spoke again, his voice carried an edge of frustration barely masked by concern. Next week? Dad, I've already rearranged my schedule. Mindy's taken time off work. I understand, and I'm sorry, but I can't risk making everyone sick. Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear him calculating, weighing his options. Okay, he said finally. If you're really not feeling well, we'll postpone. But let's aim for next Tuesday instead, July 23rd. That gives you almost a week to recover. Tuesday sounds better. Thank you for understanding. Of course. Family comes first, right? Get some rest, Dad. Feel better. After he hung up, I stood in my kitchen feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. The satisfaction of outmaneuvering a younger opponent. Lucas thought he was playing chess while I was stuck playing checkers. But Ashley had just given me 7 extra days to turn this game around completely. I pulled out my laptop and began researching lawyers specializing in elder law. If Lucas wanted to bring legal pressure to bear, I'd make sure I was ready with some pressure of my own. The walnut pie would have to wait, but the conversation we'd eventually have would be worth postponing for. The next morning brought unexpected clarity. I woke before dawn, with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since Gwendolyn's passing, as if her spirit had whispered the answer while I slept. By 8:30, I was driving toward Riverside Cemetery with white roses, her favorites, resting on the passenger seat. The summer morning was clear, sunlight filtering through oak branches exactly as she'd loved during our Sunday walks through these same grounds. Her headstone was simple granite, the way she'd insisted. Gwendolyn Marie Johnson, 1952-2014, beloved wife and mother. I knelt beside it despite my protesting knees, placing the fresh flowers where wilted ones had been. Gwen, I know you'd approve of this decision. Speaking aloud felt natural here, where her presence lingered strongest. I touched the engraved letters of her name, remembering how she'd spent her final months worrying about the legacy we'd leave behind. Let this house serve good after we're gone, she'd said during one of her better days, when morphine hadn't yet clouded her thoughts. We'd been lying in bed, watching sunlight move across the walls of the room where we'd shared 47 years of conversations. She'd always been the moral compass in our relationship, the one who saw beyond immediate problems to larger purposes. While I focused on engineering solutions, she considered human implications. The memorial bench I'd installed faced her grave directly. Sitting there now, I could almost hear her voice analyzing Lucas's transformation, see her gentle frown as she processed his calculated manipulation. He's lost his way, she would have said. But that doesn't mean we have to lose ours. The drive home took me through neighborhoods where we'd walked together, past the elementary school where Lucas had learned to read, the park where he'd played Little League baseball. Somewhere along those years, the boy who'd cried when his hamster died had become a man who viewed his father as dead capital. But Gwendolyn wouldn't want bitterness to guide my response. She'd want something constructive, something that honored both the love we'd shared and the values we'd tried to instill in our son. Back in our garden, I followed the stone path we'd laid together during our first summer in the house. Her roses climbed the trellis exactly as she'd envisioned, creating walls of pink and white blooms that attracted bees in lazy, drowsy numbers. The lavender released its fragrance as I brushed against it, triggering memories of her hands harvesting herbs for cooking, for small bouquets she'd arranged throughout the house. She'd planted everything with intention: roses for beauty, herbs for purpose, vegetables for sustenance. A garden should feed both body and soul, she'd explained, designing beds that would bloom in sequence from spring through fall. As I sat among the plants she'd chosen with such care, breathing in the lavender that still carried the essence of her gentle hands, I felt the profound certainty that comes when love guides difficult decisions towards something greater than personal pain. The house would serve a good purpose after my death. It would help families fighting the same battle that had taken her from me. Lucas's greed would be transformed into something meaningful, whether he intended it or not. I looked back at the cottage, seeing it with new eyes, not just as shelter or investment property, but as a vessel for continuing the work Gwendolyn had started with her volunteer hours at the Cancer Support Center. The irony was perfect. Lucas wanted to liquidate our love story for personal gain. Instead, it would become a permanent memorial to everything he'd forgotten about family, sacrifice, and putting others before yourself. Standing slowly from the memorial bench, I felt my shoulders straighten with resolve. The decision was made. Now I needed to make the necessary phone calls. That afternoon, I spent 2 hours researching cancer foundations online, my laptop open on the kitchen table, where Gwendolyn used to grade papers from her substitute teaching jobs. The Oregon Cancer Foundation appeared most frequently in my searches, established, reputable, with a specific program for life estate donations. By Thursday morning, I was sitting in their modest downtown Portland office, watching Sarah Mitchell review my property documents with professional thoroughness. "This is extraordinary, Mr. Johnson." She looked up from the paperwork, her eyes warm with genuine appreciation. "We're deeply moved by your gift in memory of your wife." Gwendolyn volunteered at cancer support groups for years, I explained, settling back in the comfortable conference room chair. She always said the research was as important as the care. Sarah nodded, organizing the documents with practiced efficiency. "Your house will help fund research that could save countless lives. This type of legacy gift, it's exactly what we need to accelerate breakthrough treatments." The legal process was more straightforward than I'd expected. Life estate donation meant I retained the right to live in the house for my lifetime, with full ownership transferring to the foundation upon my death. No rent, no fees, no restrictions on my daily life. You understand? Sarah clarified. This becomes irrevocable after 30 days. Once that period passes, the donation cannot be undone. I understand completely. I signed each document with steady hands, my engineer's mind appreciating the precise legal language that would protect both parties. The notary public witnessed every signature, stamping official seals beside my name. Copies were made for my records, originals filed with the foundation's legal team. By noon, the paperwork was complete. There is one thing, Sarah said as we concluded. Given the property's value, this will generate significant media interest. The foundation likes to publicize major gifts to inspire other donors. Perfect. Lucas would learn about his lost inheritance through news coverage, along with everyone else who'd assumed a grieving widower would be easy to manipulate. When would you announce it? Typically within a week of document filing. We'd want to interview you about your motivation, perhaps photograph you at the property. That sounds wonderful. I stood, shaking her hand firmly. Gwendolyn would be thrilled knowing her memory will help other families. Walking to my car, I felt lighter than I had in months. The house was protected, Gwendolyn's legacy secured, and Lucas's scheme neutralized completely. But more than that, I'd found a way to transform family betrayal into something meaningful and lasting. The drive home took me past the neighborhood where Lucas lived, his modern townhouse gleaming in the afternoon sun. Tomorrow evening, he'd welcome me into what he believed would be a carefully orchestrated ambush. Instead, he'd face a father who'd already outmaneuvered him completely. That night, I organized the foundation documents in my study, placing them in a folder marked Estate Planning Final Version. Lucas would recognize the irony eventually, though perhaps not immediately. The small digital recorder Ashley had given me last Christmas sat beside the documents, fully charged and ready. Oregon's single-party consent law meant I could legally record any conversation involving myself, creating evidence of any pressure tactics Lucas might attempt. Everything was prepared. Tomorrow's confrontation would be my last gift to a son who'd forgotten the difference between price and value. That evening, with the documents safely in my possession, I positioned myself in my favorite armchair with the phone within easy reach. The foundation papers lay organized in a neat folder on the side table, next to Ashley's Christmas gift, a small digital recorder she'd bought so I could capture family stories for posterity. How fitting that it would record a very different kind of family story. At 7 o'clock precisely, I dialed Lucas's number. The recorder was already running, discreetly positioned for optimal audio capture. Dad? His voice carried immediate concern, mixed with poorly concealed excitement. How are you feeling? Much better, son. I can come tomorrow after all. Wonderful. We've been so worried about you. The enthusiasm in his response felt rehearsed, overly bright. It'll be a real family celebration. I leaned back in my chair, modulating my voice to sound grateful, but slightly fragile. I really appreciate your patience with your old father, Lucas. Yesterday I was convinced I had food poisoning. These things happen at our age. I mean, at any age. The important thing is, you're recovered. I'm looking forward to Mindy's walnut pie, and seeing Ashley, of course. She's been asking about you constantly. We all have. Lucas's tone grew more animated. Oh, and Dad? I hope you don't mind, but we might have some other guests stopping by later in the evening. Just family friends. Family friends. The lawyers Ashley had overheard them discussing. Friends are always welcome in a family gathering. These are very special friends. People who've been helpful with some planning we've been doing. His confidence was showing now, the assumption that I remained oblivious to his intentions. They're interested in meeting you. Planning? Just some practical matters, things every family should discuss. Lucas's voice carried that business-like efficiency I'd learned to recognize. Nothing urgent, but since we'll all be together anyway. I pressed the recorder closer to the phone, ensuring clear audio capture. What time should I arrive? 6 o'clock sharp would be perfect. That gives us time for dinner before our friends join us around 8. 8 o'clock? Just enough time to relax me with family conversation and Mindy's cooking before springing their legal ambush. I'll be there at 6. Should I bring anything? Just yourself, Dad. Just your wonderful self. After hanging up, I sat in the gathering dusk, reviewing the conversation I'd just recorded. Lucas's eagerness was barely contained, His references to planning and practical matters clearly meant to prepare me for tomorrow's surprise. But Ashley had given me the greatest gift possible, advanced knowledge of the trap. Now, Lucas would walk into my carefully prepared counterattack, believing he held all the advantages. I tested the recorder's playback function, hearing my own voice asking innocent questions, while Lucas unknowingly revealed his strategy. Clear audio, legally admissible evidence of premeditation, should I ever need it. Tomorrow at 6 o'clock, I would arrive at Lucas's house carrying the foundation documents that had already transferred ownership of my property beyond his reach. While he orchestrated his careful manipulation with lawyers and legal pressure, I would watch him discover that his inheritance had vanished into something far more meaningful than his bank account. The irony was perfect. He wanted to discuss practical family planning. We'd discuss exactly that, just not the way he'd anticipated. I placed the recorder back on the table beside the foundation folder, everything ready for tomorrow's revelation. Lucas thought he was playing chess while I stumbled through checkers. Tomorrow, he'd learn that his old father had been playing an entirely different game. Lucas answered the door with a smile that reached his eyes for the first time in years. Or perhaps I was finally seeing it clearly. His enthusiasm felt calculated now, a performance designed to lower my guard before the evening's main event. "Dad, you look great, much better than yesterday." The townhouse gleamed with careful preparation. Mindy had set the dining table with Gwendolyn's china, plates I'd given them as a wedding gift, now deployed as emotional weapons. The walnut pie sat cooling on the kitchen counter exactly as promised, filling the air with maple and cinnamon. "Ashley," I called, spotting my granddaughter hovering in the living room doorway. She approached slowly, dressed in the blue sundress Gwendolyn had bought her last Christmas. "Hi, Grandpa." Her voice was smaller than usual, weighted with secrets she couldn't share. During dinner, Lucas and Mindy performed beautifully. They asked about my health, shared neighborhood gossip, discussed Ashley's upcoming school year. Normal family conversation that felt increasingly surreal as the clock approached 7:15. The digital recorder in my jacket pocket captured every word, every laugh, every calculated gesture of false intimacy. I'd activated it before leaving my car, ensuring clear audio quality for what was to come. "More wine, Dad?" Lucas refilled my glass without waiting for an answer. "I'm so glad we're doing this. Family dinners should be regular, don't you think?" "Absolutely." I sampled Mindy's pie, complimenting the perfectly balanced sweetness. "Your mother's recipe, but you've made it your own." Mindy beamed with practiced warmth. "I've been thinking we should do this every Sunday. Make it a tradition." 7:15 arrived with mathematical precision. The doorbell chimed once, then twice, as if the visitors were eager to begin their performance. Lucas feigned surprise beautifully. Who could that be? But I noticed how quickly he moved toward the door, how smoothly Mindy began clearing dessert plates, how Ashley's posture stiffened with recognition of the moment she'd warned me about. "Dad, what a surprise." Lucas's voice carried from the foyer. Come in, come in." Two men in business suits entered the dining room carrying leather briefcases. Behind them, a woman with a notary stamp and official documents. Professional vultures dressed for a feeding. "These are our attorneys," Lucas announced, his tone shifting to business efficiency. "They want to help us arrange your future care and, well, the inheritance situation." I blinked slowly, allowing confusion to cloud my features. "Tonight, during family dinner?" "It's just a formality, Dad." Lucas sat beside me, opening a briefcase full of papers. "Sign here, and we can get back to enjoying our evening." The documents spread across Gwendolyn's china like ravens on snow. Property transfer forms, power of attorney papers, will modifications. Everything designed to strip away my independence and transfer my life's work to Lucas immediately. "I don't understand." My voice carried the perfect note of elderly bewilderment. "Why the rush?" "Everyone's time is valuable," one lawyer explained, clicking his pen with mechanical efficiency. "These documents protect your interests while ensuring smooth transition when the time comes." Ashley sat frozen at the table, watching her parents orchestrate my destruction with professional precision. Her eyes met mine briefly, a moment of shared understanding that this was exactly what she'd tried to prevent. "Just signatures, nothing complicated," Mindy added, moving behind my chair. "We can explain details later." I stared at the papers, my hand trembling slightly as I reached for the pen they'd placed beside the documents. Around the table, 5 people waited for me to surrender everything I'd built, everything Gwendolyn and I had shared, everything that mattered. The pen felt heavy in my arthritic fingers as I positioned it above the signature line. Instead of signing, I reached into my jacket pocket. Let me get my reading glasses. But what emerged wasn't glasses. I placed the folded foundation documents on the table beside Lucas's papers, then set my small digital recorder next to them, pressing the play button with steady fingers. I'm sorry, but I've already transferred the house. The silence was absolute. Lucas stared at the Oregon Cancer Foundation letterhead, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and growing horror. What? That's impossible. I opened the foundation documents, revealing official transfer papers, dated July 19th, yesterday. The house now belongs to the Oregon Cancer Foundation. I retain the right to live there until my death, after which it helps fund cancer research in Gwendolyn's memory. Mindy grabbed for the papers, her composure cracking. This can't be legal. You can't just... The recorder began playing Lucas's voice from our conversation the night before, clear and damning. These are very special friends, people who've been helpful with some planning we've been doing. The audio continued, revealing his casual references to lawyers arriving during dessert, his confidence about pressuring me into signing. You recorded me? Lucas's voice rose toward a shout. Oregon is a one-party consent state, I replied calmly. I have every right to record my own conversations. The lawyers exchanged glances, recognizing they'd been manipulated into participating in what was now clearly an attempted fraud. The notary began packing her supplies, distancing herself from the unfolding disaster. This is fraud! Lucas slammed his hand on the table, making the china jump. You deceived us. No, son, you deceived yourselves. I stood slowly, gathering the foundation documents. You thought you were dealing with a confused old man. Instead, you revealed exactly what kind of people you've become. Ashley watched from her chair, relief and amazement warring in her expression. Her small act of courage had saved her grandfather from this elaborate betrayal. You can't do this, Mindy's voice cracked with desperation. We have rights. We're your family. Family doesn't manipulate. Family doesn't deceive. Family doesn't treat elderly relatives like resources to be harvested. I picked up the recorder, still playing Lucas's incriminating words. You stopped being my family the moment you decided I was worth more dead than alive. Lucas lunged for the foundation papers, but I held them beyond his reach. I'll contest this. I'll prove you're incompetent. With what evidence? This recording of you planning fraud? I gestured toward the lawyers, who were hastily packing their briefcases. These professionals who participated in attempted elder abuse. The attorneys were already heading toward the door, recognizing that their participation in this scheme could destroy their careers. The notary followed quickly, leaving only the family to face the wreckage of Lucas's plan. While you spent this week planning to steal my life's work through deception and manipulation, I continued, my voice gaining strength, I spent it ensuring that your mother's memory would be honored and that our home would serve something greater than your greed. Lucas's face had gone pale, then red, then purple with rage. You're destroying our family. You destroyed it the moment you chose money over love. I moved toward the door, my business here finished. The house will help cancer research. Gwendolyn would approve. Don't you dare use Mom's name. Lucas followed me, still shouting. She'd want family to inherit, not strangers. I paused at the threshold, looking back at the man who'd once been my son. Your mother spent her final months volunteering with cancer patients, holding hands with families facing exactly what we faced. She'd be proud that our house will continue that work. Ashley appeared beside me, her small hand briefly touching mine, a moment of contact that conveyed everything we couldn't say aloud. Understanding, gratitude, love that transcended the destruction surrounding us. You are no longer my son, I said quietly, the words carrying the finality of granite settling into place. Then I walked out into the evening air, leaving behind the wreckage of a family that had chosen greed over everything Gwendolyn and I had tried to teach them. The drive home through familiar Portland streets felt like emerging from underwater into clear air. Classical music played softly on the radio, Pachelbel's Canon, the piece Gwendolyn had chosen for our wedding, processional 49 years ago. Summer evening light slanted through the car windows as I navigated tree-lined avenues toward the neighborhood where we'd built our life together. Everything looked the same. Houses settled into comfortable evening routines, gardens heavy with July blooms, children playing in driveways. But everything had changed. I'd severed the last connection to Lucas permanently, choosing justice over family sentiment. The weight of that decision pressed against my chest, not with regret, but with the gravity of necessary actions finally completed. My cottage appeared around the familiar corner, sitting peacefully among Gwendolyn's roses exactly as I'd left it. No longer mine in legal terms, but still my sanctuary until death claimed me. The foundation would inherit stone and wood, but the memories remained mine forever. I parked in the driveway and walked slowly through the garden, touching plants Gwendolyn had chosen with such care. The lavender released its evening fragrance as my fingers brushed the purple spikes. Roses climbed the trellis in cascades of pink and white, their perfume mixing with the scent of herbs she'd planted for both beauty and purpose. The memorial bench faced west, positioned to catch the last light of day exactly as she'd requested during her final summer. I settled onto the familiar wood, feeling the slight sag where decades of evening conversations had worn the surface smooth. "We did it, Gwen," I spoke aloud to the garden that held her presence stronger than any grave marker. "The house will help fight the disease that took you. Lucas chose his path, and I chose mine." Twilight gathered slowly, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Somewhere in the distance, a neighbor's lawnmower hummed its summer evening song. Children's voices carried on the warm air, families ending another ordinary day with the blessing of togetherness I'd lost tonight. But peace settled around me like a familiar quilt. I'd protected what mattered most. The house would serve Gwendolyn's memory by helping cancer research. Future families would benefit from treatments funded partly by our love story transformed into hope. Lucas would rage and threaten, but the law protected charitable donations from contested inheritance claims. His greed had been transformed into good despite his intentions, which seemed exactly the kind of cosmic justice Gwendolyn would have appreciated. Ashley would remember that her grandfather had chosen integrity over easy surrender. Someday, when she was older, she'd understand why family sometimes meant saying no to family. Stars began appearing in the deepening sky, the same constellations Gwendolyn and I had identified from this very spot during countless summer evenings. Jupiter hung low on the horizon, exactly where her astronomy book said it should be in late July. As I sat among the roses in the gathering darkness, breathing in the peace that comes after storms have passed and landscapes have been forever changed, I felt the deep satisfaction of a man who had protected what mattered most and ensured that love would triumph over greed. The house would stand long after I was gone, sheltering research that might spare other families the loss that had shaped my final years. Lucas had wanted to liquidate our love story for personal gain. Instead, it would become a permanent memorial to everything he'd forgotten about sacrifice, service, and putting others before yourself. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and anger, threats and accusations. But tonight, in Gwendolyn's garden, surrounded by the fragrance of flowers she'd planted and the memory of love that death couldn't diminish, I was exactly where I belonged. The house was safe, her memory was honored, justice was served. It was enough. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.